Hello. Yes, I have a t-shirt on my head because I just washed my hair and it is not atypical for particularly Black women, maybe other women with very curly hair, to dry their hair with a cotton towel because it doesn't catch the ends of hair. So I just wanted to get that out the way before you're like, what's going on? Really quick, I have been looking at there's two things that I want to talk about, and I didn't decide which one I was going to talk about before I got on here. I want to talk about Luke 19 in the Bible, and I also want to talk about Deidra Riggs' book one. I'm going to talk about Deidra Riggs' book one. I will come back to Luke 19. So Deidra Riggs is a writer, a speaker, and she is doing really good work on Instagram too, just calling in and calling out the things that need to be called in and called out. She has a Patreon and she's going through her book one, and it is a book on unity. She literally wrote the book on unity. So this will be more of a unity-oriented peacemaking reflection thought. And so I've gone through the first chapter of her book, and it was interesting because she has been inviting people to her Patreon. She said, listen, I wrote this book. I don't remember exactly when it was written, but she wrote it a handful of years ago. She's like, there are things I would change. She was like, I'm a different person. I was a different person. There's things I would change. There's things I would keep the same. I'm going to go through the book with people on my Patreon because we need to go through it and talk about it. So she posted about that on Instagram. You can go look at some of her posts around, today is January 25th, I think. So around 24th, 25th of January 2021, if you want to check out what she said. But it's been interesting to read it and guess at what some of the things are that she may or may not change. One of my favorite parts that she talks about, I have the Kindle version. This is on page 36. I highlighted it. And she's talking about this is how do we love well? And this is part of how she answers in this portion of the book. She says, when we get called on the carpet for our complicity in systems, perspectives, and practices that divide, we act like the humbled basketball player who gets caught traveling on the court. We raise our hand and fess up. My bad, we say. We take the penalty. We make course corrections. We apologize. We lament. We recognize that though we are called to elevate the conversation, we are not above the conversation or immune to our own prejudices. And when someone from the other team raises her hand and says, my bad, we do not shut her down or shut her out. Always, 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 oneness is our goal. I don't know if she would change anything about that. Again, she hasn't started the study yet, but I read that and thought, that's it. That is the beginning. As I talked about unity-oriented peacemaking on a video on Instagram, I really pushed back on this post-January 6th insurrection call to unity. Can we just all be unified? And Deidra Riggs said something very similar. Lisa Sharon Harper said something very similar. Oshita Morris said some similar thing. Like, there are voices out there, and those are just a few of the voices. Like, I could just go down a list. Saying, no, this is not the right order of operations. If you want unity, the first thing you have to do, let me go back. When we're called on the carpet for our complicity, we raise our hand and fess up. Remember, I said, well, I don't know if you remember, if you watched the video on unity-oriented peacemaking, I said the first thing is that the injustice is called out. Usually it's called out by the person that's being offended, by a person who's being harmed, by the person who is being oppressed. It's usually not the offender that says, well, you know what, I think I'm offending somebody. But the response is not to explain it away or to not acknowledge it or to just rush past the point that you currently find yourself at, which is acknowledging the injustice. You look at it and you're like, yeah, no, I was wrong. And then you receive humbly whatever comes next. If it is, if there's some sort of reprimand, a correction, if there's an apology that's needed, which I think if is like a, I think there is apology needed when there's offense, oppression, harm, yes, injury. And then our response, right? The offended, the offended or the harmed response when somebody says, you know what? Yep, that was wrong. Is not to shut down or shut out. I'm all for accountability. If you out here being wild, if you're out here perpetuating the systemic issues of power, privilege, access, things like that, as you benefit from them, there's accountability. You need to be told about yourself. There needs to be truth telling, because in the truth telling, we can adjust and move towards a space of liberation. We can't if we don't tell the truth. And so people who are willing to say that is true, I do benefit. This is a problem. My benefits are at the expense of someone else's harm and injury and oppression, and that's not okay. And I'm partaking and benefiting from these systems, complicit in it, and no longer. I am going to course correct, do the things, apologize, change, and work my way, into a different location as far as how I respond to these realities that of the system that has been built around us, and do the work of tearing it down. Then we again can start walking the path of peacemaking that is pointing us towards unity. We can't do that without first the acknowledgement of the injustice and accepting the acknowledgement and making change. Those are the first two steps. So I'm really looking forward to this this conversation that Deidre's having over on her Patreon. I'm so curious about the things that she would change and the things that she would keep the same, and how it's going to unfold, because she's got a really mixed group of folks that I think follow her, and so the conversation will be good. So if you can, this is not I'm not doing this. Deidre didn't ask me to do this. I'm doing this because I think it's really important to have this conversation. If you got $5 extra a month, you can get on her Patreon for $5 and be a part of the conversation. Also follow her on Instagram if you can't. Pick up her book. The Kindle is $9. You can get it at a local bookstore as well if you want a physical copy. And I will be back soon talking more about Luke 19. And I hope y'all have a good one.